Like an investment banker or something.
Everyone's fully great. It's just side on you pick when they're
Is that going to be
Guys, we'll be starting in a couple of minutes. So you just grab a drink, grab some food, and take a seat somewhere. Feel free to move the boxes if they're in your way.
Do you still see much of Dan? All the time.
Sorry.
Sorry guys, let me get this.
Good to go. Stay out of the way of this section. You will not appear on it, so that's an issue. Just stay out of its line of sight. And you can see it on YouTube later if you want to revisit what I'm sure are going to be some great talks by Tom and Thomas. This is a dual Tom event for those of you that are concerned, so just to put that out there. My name is Harry McLaren. I work for ECS and I'm for spending some time to come. Thank you very much to Product Forge who are here providing the live streaming and the hosting and so on, so that's really good, especially we've had some technical difficulties, but hopefully they're behind us, touch wood. So quickly, this event is kind of hosted in conjunction with Splunk. So we're a Splunk partner, one of the largest in the UK. I think many, if not all of you, know this already, so I'll not go too deep into it, but just to say that this is essentially this is what we've got for you this evening. I'm going to cover some basic housekeeping. So this is going to just make sure that we cover what this event's for. And then we're going to get straight into it. So I think we've actually reversed that a little bit. So Tom Wise is going to come up first, talking about Phantom and Splunk. Phantom's a security orchestration and automation tool that Splunk have just purchased. So it's a really interesting technology. And then we've got Thomas, who's going to talk about Docker, which is a containerizing technology, and how you can use it to build Splunk labs and dev environments really rapidly. It's really cool. And then finally, I'm going to cover a little bit about enterprise security content updates, which really seek to accelerate the ability to do things like threat hunting and detection and response when you're utilizing Splunk. So first and foremost, this is an official user group from Splunk. That means it's a no-sales environment. It's absolutely fine if you're not technical in your role, but you just can't use this space to try and sell things. That goes for everyone, including myself. This is a technically led discussion, and if you've got something to share, we'd love to hear about it. So please do contribute as you can. And I think we're going to slide straight in. And these slides are back to front.
Thank you. Mic me.
There you go, it's the first time.
Good job. Right, hopefully this works. Yes.
Okay, so thanks guys for attending today. Again, I'm back for the second time. Last time I spoke, I pretty much talked about myself for half an hour. So today I thought I should probably bring something a bit more technical to the mix, especially with the recent acquisition of Phantom by Splunk, and now it is becoming an automation and orchestration game changer with the two forces joining together. So just a quick agenda of what I'll talk about. So I'm going to introduce myself, do a Splunk refresh just for the wider audiences out there who might not know about what Splunk is. And yes, I will break the fourth wall. Hi, guys. So just to show you, obviously, the basics of Splunk, introduction to what Phantom is and what it can do. I'll show you the difference between the two apps, because each platform has an app which allows the two to communicate together, but there are some slight differences. I'll do a very brief demo just to show you some of the shiny stuff about it. Again, happy to open up to any questions, or if anyone wants another demo at another time, then please ask me. And then I'll open it up to any questions at the end as well. So a little bit, who am I? So I'm a senior consultant at ECS Security. I've got pretty much every certification Splunk has to offer now. I just did the advanced core implementation last week. So I'm Architect 2 consultant, ES and ITSI implementation, and also this year I was onboarded as a Splunk trainer and have done a couple of training courses for Splunk as well. Previous experience before this role and learning Splunk 2 years ago now. Worked for the Ministry of Defence on a project for HP for about 6 years, supporting second line support for our deployed forces. And then more recently on the European Space Agency project for the Galileo satellites. So I was a systems integration engineer. Just a little bit of back history there. Just some of the certifications and accreditations. And then we'll get to Splunk. So this is going to be the quick refresh. Now I appreciate pretty much everyone in here is going to know what Splunk is and their general message. But this is their mission statement, if you like, that they want to make machine data accessible and usable and valuable to everyone, which is what they do. And everyone in the room will know that. But obviously anyone else, that is definitely what they do. So this is just a brief slide just to show you the basics again of Splunk. So it can be deployed in a variety of configurations. You can install it on a single machine and mess about with it with the free license up to 500 meg a day. Or it can be a fully scaled infrastructure where you've got search tiers, you've got indexing tiers, you've got forwarder tiers, all receiving data from many endpoints and systems. As long as it's text data, then Splunk can ingest it. It doesn't have to conform to any sort of database in the background. That's what the schema on the fly is all about. It'll take those events, it'll parse them, and then obviously give you actionable intelligence on those events as well. Stores them in indexes just as flat files, so they're searchable from the search heads, or again, if you've got it as a single tier, it'll all install it in one place, and you can access that data, and you can segment it as well by creating multiple indexes. And then once you've got all that in, you can then run searches against that data. You can run reports, whether they're automated reports or manual reports. And then you can also alert as well. So if you see anomalous behavior or behavior that you're looking for bad behavior, then you can alert on that as well. And obviously user authentication, there are many options where you've got local authentication, you can do single sign-on, link it into Active Directory or LDAP, and many other options as well. But again, this is just to kind of give you a brief refresh. I'm sure you guys in the room are pretty au fait with what Splunk does. So, introduction to Phantom. Not that one. So this is their mission statement. It's a bit longer than the Splunk one, but I'll read it out for you guys. So the Phantom platform integrates your existing security technologies, providing a layer of connective tissue between them. With Phantom, you can automate tasks, orchestrate workflows, and support a broad range of SOC functions, including event and case management, collaboration, and reporting. For today, I'll mainly center on the automation, the orchestration piece. Obviously, it is a lot more of a rounded product and does have a lot more to offer as well. But just again, for time and just for focus, we'll look at the really cool stuff that we're interested in for this particular meeting. So, apologize for the dark slides. Didn't realize it wasn't going to show up very well. Tried to make the white a bit more white. But so this model here is called the OODA model. Now, it actually was created by a US Air Force Navy pilot and their decision making on how they do their decision making, but at the same time Phantom have kind of integrated into their thought process of how the security kind of environment works basically. So you've got all of your point products, so you've got all businesses are going to have some sort of firewall, IDS, all these sort of endpoints that you're going to be able to get data from, and are performing functions as well in security context or even in IT ops context. Then you've got the orientation where you've got SIEMs, you've got threat platforms, you've got Hadoop, places where you're putting that data in and potentially using it to, again, do the stuff that I mentioned earlier, searching, reporting, alerting. But then this is the space that Phantom see themselves in now, where you've got obviously your tier 1 through 3 security guys, SOC engineers or analysts, for example, and they're having to then use this intelligence and actually manually act upon some of this stuff, go onto different security centers for different vendors, you know, perform different actions, a lot of the manual. But with Phantom, you're going to see how this can predominantly be automated. You can also put obviously key decision points in, because you don't necessarily want it running wild on your network. So you can have places that says, you know, inform someone first and only go ahead with that action if they say yes. But this is kind of the whole where they see themselves sitting. And to be fair, based on what I've seen, it definitely does that job well. A couple of slides here just from Phantom. This kind of shows the whole product, if you like, the areas that they sit in. So you've got the automation, orchestration, collaboration, because it allows you to share and case manage with people on the platform as well. So you can literally just message someone on the platform and say, here, have a look at this, and pull them into the case. Event management, case management, and reporting and metrics. These are all things that we're all kind of used to anyway, especially if you work for ECS. We obviously have our own SOCs and provide SOCs as well. So, excuse me. And this is also stuff that you can use things like enterprise security for in Splunk as well. So today I will mainly focus on, if I can see it, the automation. Again, apologies. I have tried to make the demo lighter, so hopefully you should be able to see that. We could try that. Well, yes. Is that a little bit better? Oh, there we go. Excellent. Okay, so the automation piece. So I'll go into it a little bit more, but this is what they call a playbook, which is effectively the codification of the actions that an analyst would take. You can automate repetitive tasks. So as anyone here who's done any scripting knows, generally if you do anything more than 3 times, you want to script it so you don't have to keep doing it. You can execute automated actions in seconds rather than hours, instead of an analyst having to get that data, potentially log on to multiple centers and work it all out and then take the action. You can now have this kind of process tree, if you like, or flow chart where it's going to do it automatically depending on a certain set of variables. And also it can prefetch intelligence to support that decision making. So it's not only what goes into Phantom. Phantom can reach out and pull in data from other sources, generally using an API of some description, and then add it onto that event as well to add further context. And additionally, in the case of the demo, I'll show you where we can push data from Splunk into Phantom. But there's also a way in which you can, if you ingest something into Phantom from another source, you can then ask it to reach into Splunk. And let's say it's an IP address, and you can ask Splunk, have you seen this IP address anywhere else? It'll pull that information and include it onto your event as well. And the orchestration piece, so as you can see here, you know, it coordinates complex workflows across your SOC. So you can see potentially there's 200 apps and 1,000 APIs. These are some of the big hitters, big vendors. You've got the Cisco's in there, you've got Git, MySQL. So these are all the endpoints or API points that the product can now hit and utilize in some way, shape, or form. So key concepts, just quickly flow through these, just because some of the wording is slightly different if you're used to security contexts or enterprise security in Splunk. They do call them slightly different names, but then you can see there are some similarities. So obviously there's security data sources, so you can send incidents in, vulnerability, threat intels, events obviously as well. It doesn't have to just be from Splunk, it can ingest via email and many other ways as well. It has an API that you can communicate with. You got apps, just like we know in Splunk, you have apps that are designed specifically for certain technologies. So a few of the big hitters, again up here, Cisco ASA, Active Directory, MaxMind. Some of these are external, as in just on the internet cloud-based. Some of them might be obviously locally based in your network. But it doesn't matter, as long as that endpoint can receive an API call and do something with it, then generally Phantom, as long as it has an app for it, then it will be able to do that. They have assets, so again, you'd configure a certain firewall as your perimeter firewall, your domain controller. Again, it's just a way to sort of segment those things out so that when it comes to that decision making and blocking IPs or shutting down systems, you've got certain key indicators that you can say, I want only my perimeter Cisco's, for example, to go down and not anything else. Actions. So we'll show a little bit more about this in a bit as well when I get sort of into the nitty gritty of the demo. But the actions of, for example, you've got simple ones that you can sort of understand just from looking at them. So block IP, disable a user, geolocate IP, so go out and find what the location of that IP address, detonate file, so malware. There is the option to detonate a file in a sandbox, for example, have it return the information of what happened when that malware was released. And obviously a few other ones like snapshot of VM, you can shut down machines and all that sort of stuff as well. So pretty powerful just based on this already. Owners as well, so you want people who are going to own those particular devices and potentially be the decision makers should any actions be taken against those devices. So if you're doing a block IP, for example, and you've got a decision block that says if it's the CIO's laptop, make sure you inform someone first, so it'll raise an alert in someone's UI, or it'll send a message out to that person and expect a response before you go ahead with it. So obviously CIO IP is a kind of high level one, but it could be anything. If there's something that you're worried that it could just run away and block without you having any decision making in it, then you can put a block in there that says only do this when someone says yes or no, or based on another response as well. There's plenty of other options to configure when you're actually using the system. And then finally, playbooks. So these, as I said earlier, the codification of the actions that the agents take, and they're the kind of Visio on steroids thing that I'll show you in a little bit, where it's a flow chart, but they're action blocks. So instead of a block just telling you part of a process, that block will actually have some code behind it, some Python code, all written in Python, that will actually go out and do these actions, work out variables, pass on certain variables to the next action block, etc. But I'll show that when I do my brief-ish demo. Hopefully I don't get run away with it too much. So again, not a great picture, but this is kind of this is a container. So a container within Phantom is almost what you class as an event, but a container can have many artifacts in it. So it can have an IP address, source IP, destination IP. They're all then classed as artifacts, but this is what's called a container, which is effectively the event that contains all the information. So you can see recent activity down the left-hand side, so you'll be able to see any playbooks that have been ran against that particular container. So it could be an automated playbook that's already run. You could manually set one off, as you can see in the top there, and it'll all be listed in the left-hand side, exactly all the interactions that's gone on with that particular container. Artifacts, so again, anything that comes into that container, again, it could be source IP, file hash, it could be pretty much anything that comes in on that data that you're sending in is then listed under the artifacts. And as I'll show you, you can then get the option to manually run stuff against it as well, even just a single artifact. Depending on what you've got installed on the system, it will provide you with what actions it can do and a list of them, and you can manually start it just from this page as well. So if it's already ran an automated playbook, and then you think, well, actually it missed this, or I didn't add this into the playbook, you can do it manually and then go and update your playbook, or just do it manually as well. But again, we are looking mainly for automation with this. The vault, so if there are any malware files that have been extracted or anything that needs contained, then they will be in the vault. You can download them from it and you can put stuff in there as well. But that's just where if you do have an automated action that might do something file related, and you don't want it sort of, to be able to propagate, then it'll be stuck in this vault. And you can view it, and again, it'll pull all the information of what it does, especially if you have detonated it in a sandbox already. Reports, so this is just statistics and action results associated with the container. Again, just a bit of a bigger view on what you've got in your recent activity. It supports the ability to manually run an action or a playbook against that container. And as you can see, you can also add an artifact as well. So you can manually run stuff, you can see what's already ran in here, and then potentially fill in any gaps if you need to. Mission controls, where all the information is stored. It's kind of the go-to place for all of your containers, if you like. And obviously, as you can see, there's a lot of stuff in here. You can pivot off it and take more action. So yeah, mission control is pretty powerful, but this is a container view itself at the moment. So you're inside a container. And then the container ID, so this is just a one, obviously, because it's a demo. But yeah, obviously that'll then give you an indication of how many containers you have or which one you're actually working on. So again, you can focus your actions a bit better. This just goes a little bit more into what playbooks are. So I've said that the codification of the human incident response plan. So you can write in Python, basically, or using the editor, what your guys would usually do for this particular type of event. And it's fully automated. You can, again, add stuff in. So when you're creating playbooks, you can just drag and drop and create action blocks, decision blocks, but you can also then start writing your own. Now, I don't know if you're aware, but if you're doing a regex extraction on Splunk, for example, and you write your own regex, you lose the ability to use the graphical sort of, copy and, well, not highlight and extract. It's the same with Phantom. So if you do start messing about with the Python code when you're in a playbook, just be aware there's a lot of stuff that goes under the hood, so you won't be able to use the nice graphical UI anymore. So it's just a caveat, really. So they are implemented all in Python. There is some sort of debugging code already in some of the blocks, so you can just unhash some of the stuff in there, and it will automatically provide additional debugging for your playbook when you're running it through. And you can put this debugger at any point in the chain as well to, again, get more information if your playbooks aren't quite working right, or if you're trying to make them a bit more efficient. So it does provide graphical as well as a playbook editor in the UI. So you can kind of use the graphical one to get the layout complete and how you want your actions to flow. And then obviously if you want to, you can then flip into and add your own little bits of Python to make it a bit better and augment your existing playbooks. They can be executed in automated fashion upon ingestion of new containers or artifacts as well. And as you saw earlier, we can also manually run them. Also, playbooks can call other playbooks. So if you have a certain bit of your playbook that breaks off and then wants to run another playbook, you can do that as well. So it's like I say, it's very intuitive and pretty powerful. I'm going to go into some of the apps now because it can be a bit confusing because they both have their own app for the type of communication. So the Phantom Splunk app, query stuff, push stuff into it, that sort of stuff. And it comes with 6 supported actions. The top action is test connectivity, but I'll go into that in a little bit. On polls, so you can ingest logs from your Splunk instance. You can get host events, so if that container has an artifact which is a host in there, you could have an action that goes off into Splunk and says, where else is this host? Because I may have only seen it from a firewall log or something like that. This can now reach out into Splunk and say, where else is this host seen, and pull back information based on that as well. I won't be showing that for this class because I didn't quite get it finished before the before the talk. You can run a query, so you can actually send a specific Splunk search up to your box as well, and get obviously information back. You can update a notable event, so anyone using sort of ES or ITSI, obviously notable events are kind of the main thing, so you can update that as well from. So if you've had to go out and get some more information, you can then have your last action as updating that notable event. And again, just adding more metadata and more stuff to that event to give you, better visibility. And again, you can post data to Splunk as well. There are 5 playbooks that come with sort of associated to it, sorry. So they've got a hunting playbook, a WannaCry prevent, tracking AD admin users, IP investigate and report, which I'll actually show you that one because it's quite a good one to show you some of the flows that it can do, and the test connectivity as well. So this is the Splunk Phantom app. So this is what gets installed on Splunk to enable you to push to Phantom. Now you can get it from 2 separate places. This is actually on the Phantom website. So if anyone wants to even know about Phantom or get involved in the community, please sign up. And you can download this app. You can also download an OVA of the actual appliance itself. Or if you request it, you can get RPM access as well if you want to install it yourself. But it installs against your user account with the community as well. So you will need to have account with them to be able to use it, at least the appliance. These you don't. These just go into any Splunk instance. Again, this is the one on the Splunk base, splunk.com, and this is the one on the actual Phantom website, which I've put the links in there for you to get if you wish to after the talk. And then this is the one, again, I've just gone into how it looks when you're actually on the box. So this is how you would select it on the box. One cool thing is you've got the documentation link there. So with Splunk at the moment, if you're using a TA or an app, and you want more information on it, you've generally got to go onto another computer or on the same one, but you've got to go off to Splunk docs, find the latest one, etc. But Phantom actually ships with its own Git repository, and it has all its documentation locally on the machine. So you just click that documentation link. It'll then provide all the variables that it needs to actually work, so how you configure the application and everything, whether it's optional or not. As you can see here, passwords and ports and stuff are optional, but other stuff is required, and it tells you whether it's a string, a number, a boolean, so true or false. And again, it'll give you further information on what the actions do and all the variables that you can pass through. Again, I'll show you that once I get into the demo. This is just an asset configuration, so every single app you configure an asset for. So obviously you put in the details of your Splunk server, the port you want to communicate over. I created its own account as well, so it could communicate only with Splunk and Phantom. And then they've got some optional fields here where you've got queries to use on poll, etc. But obviously I haven't filled those in for this particular showing. And then you've got this test connectivity button at the bottom. So again, this is all Python based. So when you do install an app, especially if it's going out to a URL or to an API, you can press test connectivity and you'll get a similar window to this. So you can see all it's done there is just tested it communicate on this IP address. It comes back and tells you the Splunk version, which is actually wrong now. Excuse me, because I upgraded it, and then tells you whether it's passed. Now, if you're ever writing apps for Phantom, then this is all down to you how much that goes into it. If you just want to go out and check that that URL is accessible, then that's fine, you can say passed. But you might also want to maybe pass the API key into it and confirm you can get data back before confirming the connectivity. But it's a pretty cool feature because you know that when you configure an app, you can just press a button and you know with almost certainty that you are going to be able to use that app and Phantom can at least talk to it. And this is the one on Splunk, which I was just showing you. So this is very simple configuration. So you install it as normal on Splunk. You can import it up through the GUI, or you can obviously extract it into the apps folder and restart Splunk. And then you'll get the option now to configure the Phantom the Phantom server. So on the Phantom server, you have normal user accounts, which are local accounts, allow you to sort of have a look at the dashboards and use things within the platform. But you also have automation users, which are solely just used for the automation tasks in playbooks, etc. So you can't log on as them. So for this instance, I actually created a Splunk account, which was just an automation account on the Phantom side. And when you create an automation account, you also get this, this token, basically, value that you then have to just put in here. And as long as the two can communicate, then they will now link up and you'll be able to start sending events from Splunk to Phantom. One thing, if you are installing it in your own dev environment, you do need to go into the phantom.conf in the actual app and turn off verify SSL certificate if you're just using the default ones out of the box. Otherwise, it won't connect and you'll get a failure. Took me a little while to find that one. So yeah, so that's how you configure it. Once it's configured, I'll show you what it looks like on the screen now. Give me a second. I think I've done this right. There we go. Okay. So again, the screen is a bit squished. So I've got no events in there at the moment because I thought I'd just leave it clean for you guys and give you a quick tour of the front screen first. So one thing I really like this about is the return on investment summary they have at the top. So with Phantom, what you do is you can put in a figure of an average salary of a security analyst, and every time it does an automated action, it'll come up and tell you how many dollars it saved, how much time it saved, full-time employees gained, and obviously all of your mean time to resolve, mean dwell time. And you will see that what might take a security analyst half an hour to do an action will potentially take 3 to 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 20 seconds for Phantom to do. Obviously, you have other dashboards, other panels on here as well. How many events are open, total workload, events by status, top playbooks, so which is your top playbooks that's running as well. So you can get a really good view of how your how it's performing. Again, it's empty at the moment, but it won't be in a short second. So asset health as well. So you can see I've got assets configured. So I've got my Splunk app configured. I've got virus total. You can configure as many of these assets as you want, different API keys, etc., to do different functions if you wish to. And it'll tell you here if they're healthy or not. I've got a screenshot machine as well. So rather than going on and doing a print screen, you can just tell it, go to this URL, take a screenshot and return that to my event. We've got linking with Slack, phishing initiative, URL scan. I think the have I been pwned is on there as well. So there's a few different ones that are free. Obviously, in a wider production environment, you're going to have really cool stuff to play with. One of the main ones they sort of seem to show on these demos is Carbon Black, because it has quite a lot of reach. And I think the Carbon Black app on here has something like 18 potential actions. So that just shows you how sort of broad covering it is. And then there's approvals, incoming data sources, etc. So what I'm going to do now, so this is the Phantom app. So that's the server configuration. So that's the bit I showed you before where you just put your access token and a bit of JSON in there, and then they link together. So you've got two options. So you can have a data model export. So you can tell it specific data model. I'll just show you, may as well. It seems to have been a bit squeezed with Chrome, but so you choose your data model, anything you want, say email, and then you can choose children objects as well. So you can either do the root object, which is all email, or you can specifically say, I only want to see these child objects within the data model. Again, I won't save this. So you can select the Splunk server. So if you've got multiple, Phantom servers, then again, you can choose which one you send them to. Container label, I usually leave that as default for now. And then you just tell it how often it is meant to poll. And then if I can get this moving up, which I don't seem to be able to. Yeah, that's quite stuck, isn't it? So underneath here, what you've got is, because Phantom works on Ceph fields, so you kind of have to translate the fields in your events to Ceph fields, because that's kind of what it works on. So under here, you can pick out a field that's available in that data model and map it to a Ceph field before you push it down to Phantom. You can do similar in Phantom, but obviously if you can do it as source, it just means Phantom's going to work much quicker off the bat. You can have obviously a preview window, so how far back do you want to go and how often do you want it to poll. Obviously you can have real time as well, but anyone in PS knows that real time is bad. So yeah, so once you've done this though, and once you've configured all that, you then get something like this. Obviously it's the same for the saved searches, so just give it a random name and then choose the saved search from any of them that you've saved that are obviously available to the app depending on permissions. And then you can do this generate, which I'm actually going to need to do for this demo. So all I've got here is just a demo search. I've just got the source and URL fields coming out of it. And this is really annoying because if I can't scroll down.
Try zooming out, yeah.
There we go. Okay. So I can either save and close and just let it run as it is, or I can actually do a save and preview. Now I am on my phone here, so I don't know how quick this will be. Okay, so it's found a couple of events here. Well, one event actually, with an IP address, source address, which I've mapped. So that's source underscore IP, src underscore IP, and I've mapped it to source address, which is the Ceph field. And then the request URL is just URL in Splunk field, but again, I've mapped it to request URL. Now I have a very simple playbook, which I'll show you once I've sent that data in. Okay, so that's gone to it. So we should now, he says, with some confidence. I have been doing this all day. So we now have an event in. You can see it saved me $15 and it saved me 20 minutes of time. Now obviously as you keep piling these in, that's just going to light up even more. Before, because I didn't turn off the automatic polling, it did have about 300 events in, so I deleted them all just for the purposes of today. But that again, so we've got the event in. It's already ran against my playbook, which, come on, chug, chug, chug. So this is our mission control. So you can see here, get screenshot, geolocate, who is. Now it's asking here for a prompt. I'll explain why once I show you this, but again, I'm going to have to zoom out because it's zoomed back in. I've now got an alert here. Prompt. Is it the end of the presentation? No, sorry. And then I complete. Okay. Now what I'm going to do now is show you all this stuff. So look, so I've got a screenshot. I've geolocated the IP, so that's MaxMind doing the IP location. I've got the screenshot. Now, there isn't a screenshot for this URL, unfortunately, but if there was at the end, so if you just did google.com, for example, and asked it to get a screenshot, that's all it does. It goes to the URL, takes a screenshot, and returns it in here. You can also stipulate whether that's a large file, small file, depending whether you're going to have to attach it to things as well. Virus totals given me, well, no information, but it's at least done a poll and returned some, no information. And then at the bottom here, we've got the IP reputation as well, and obviously lots of other information. Sorry, this is the who is IP, isn't it? So who is data as well. So I'll show you one of the playbooks. Is it that one? Yes. So this is a pretty cool playbook. This isn't my playbook. This is just to give you an idea of what a playbook looks like. It's a pretty simple one. It's just basically IP data, if you like. So you feed it in an event that has an IP address. A decision block here says it is an IP or a domain. Depending on whether it's an IP or a domain, it'll then take a different path, but it'll always end up in this decision block here if it goes both ways. It runs, so it does a who is, it hunts the IP and runs a query, which is obviously a special query that they've written underneath. And obviously this is determined that it's bad. It set the severity on the event, and if I zoom out, it should also update something else as well, I believe. Sorry if it gets too small. But yeah, so it'll change the severity of the alert and then finish. Oh, that's really bad, actually. I can't see it close up. So, and the same here, obviously, if it determines that it's safe, send email safe. So that'll send an email saying, we've had this event, but don't worry, it's safe. Set the severity to lower, and also set the status as well, possibly to closed or resolved, or pending some sort of review. And then also, it's the same here. If the domain's bad, it'll send bad domain, and it'll also send good domain as well. So this is just, again, this is just, I say simple. I can't use this playbook because obviously it reaches out to a lot of APIs that I don't have access to. So I created the one that you saw me run through before, which is this one here. So again, I've oversimplified it on purpose. So what I've said is, so an event comes in, if it's got a URL, get a screenshot, otherwise just pass it straight through to geolocate, so you can see the decision block just loops straight back round to the normal path that it would have come in anyway. But this says if it does have a URL in it, then take a screen of this string before you do the action. And then this is the decision block. So this says if the answer is no, but if I now push another event through, might be the same event, but let me just 2 seconds while we deal with our technical issues. Slow fingers. Right, so I'll send that one down now. So I should now have a prompt. Right, but this time, you'll be glad to hear, I'm going to say yes. And he says with some confidence, I get a text message that says, end of presentation, any questions? I just thought I'd add, because I did jump ahead a little bit, as well as the actions that you can see there where I'm pushing stuff and automating the push. When you create alerts, you know how you can do automated actions. You can also configure an alert that says every time you find something, send it to Phantom. So again, it's kind of got workflow actions as well on the end of it when you install the app. So there's almost 3+ ways to get that data into Phantom. And in future discussions, I probably will show the bi-directional communication. But that's it for today. I hope I haven't waffled too quickly for you and you're not too bored. Open for any questions. You would.
So how can you actually develop a playbook? So is there a way to debug it, making dry runs,
Yes.
it live, as it moves?
So when you create a playbook as well, you can do the playbook settings, and you've got an active setting. So when you flip that to active, that's it. It's going to run under whatever container. So I've just told it to run under the events container, but you can do, there's a star in there, so you can say run it against anything. But if you turn that off, but then turn safe mode on, then it'll still pass stuff through the playbooks, but it won't run the actions. And you can see, yeah, so sorry, I'll get to that. Oh, wrong mouse tracker. And then you've got under here, you've got the Python editor. So this is literally everything that's on that, all in Python code. I can't see the close. But also, if you click on any particular block, there's what you can't see is it's chevrons with a line in the middle, like an escape character. If you click on that, it also brings up the code for that particular block that you're doing as well. So every action block will have its own Python. You can add specific debugging into it as well. And also the end block here, I don't know if I'll be able to find the, yes. So it already has some stuff, again, not very clear because of the light and dark, etc. But this is all hashed out, but if you unhash that, then that's like an additional debugger as well. You can put this debugger, possibly slightly different code at any point in this as well. So if you are having problems with your playbooks or you want to see how they're functioning, whether they're efficient, etc., then you can do that. But yes, it's all either visually done, and as I said, if you start messing about and building your playbooks from Python, you do lose the ability to use the visual, nice charty chart. And I'll just show you as well. So from all these points here, excuse me, when you're setting this up, what you do is you drag a point out, and it gives you all these different options. So these are the different blocks that you can do. So you've got like, this is, again, I appreciate it's hard to see, but you've got like a decision block, an action block, you've got the authentication blocks here, and there are lots of other stuff that it can do as well, call out other playbooks, that kind of thing. So it's very easy to, I mean, I was going to, for the demo today, just literally create the playbook in front of your eyes, but I thought, no, in my luck, there'll be something that goes wrong and I'll take too long. So I just left it as is. But hopefully you can see how easy it is. I mean, obviously you've got to kind of understand what it's doing, but once you kind of get the logic in place and understand what flow you want to do and how you want to break it out, creating the actual chart and getting it working is actually pretty easy. Anything else?
Is any risk will follow if an API call fails because of like connection
I knew someone was going to ask this question. That does get asked quite a lot, actually, on all the calls I've been on. So no, but you can put additional sort of decision making afterwards, where if I haven't had a response from this action block within X seconds, then report it or do something. But I don't think, and again, I might be incorrect, so Phantom guys, I'm sorry, but not at the moment. There isn't. It would just stall, and you'd be able to see it in the recent activity on the mission control that it either stalled or failed to get its IP. And when you are doing that stuff, you can set SLAs. So if you do have a prompt to go out to someone, you can say, if I don't receive a response from that person in 30 seconds, pass it on to someone else. But there's still further actions you need to do to make it fully kind of, if it did break, let someone know. Oh, yes?
Question from one of our 30 live viewers.
It's going to be one of my mates, isn't it?
Do you have to be proficient in Python, or is there a build-assisted API function for coding? And
Well,
can you repeat the question so they can hear it?
Well, what was the question?
Do you have to be proficient in Python, or is there a build-assist feature?
So do you have to be proficient in Python, or is there a build assist feature? No, not really, because as I've shown you there, all you have to do when you're creating these playbooks is click on what you want to do. You can then choose the app that you want to do that action. So for example, MaxMind, what action you want it to take. You then configure it. And obviously in this case, for example, we might have a get screenshot that's passing on something, or we might just have an artifact that we want to automatically run again. And then once you've done that, it'll all just connect together. You join the dots and you're ready to go. But obviously if you do want to get into the Python, then it is also there as well. Any more for any more? Cool, well, thanks very much for your time, guys, and hopefully you've learned a bit today. Shout out if you need anything. I think I did have a quick what's next on my, on my slides, if I can find them, just to give you a quick what to do now. So, again, sorry, it's not too big, but Splunk.com, start using Splunk for free, download it, 500 meg a day, start messing around with it, pumping data into it, Splunk your house. There's plenty of use cases where it's already been done. Splunk.com, where you can download the apps and add-ons. There are over 2,000 now, I believe, apps available, some for very big vendors and some for people who've actually made their own apps for some very niche cases as well. And then always answers.splunk.com. If you can't get an answer quickly, go on to Answers, and generally someone will be there ready to answer it for you. Most of the support stuff gets answered quicker in Answers. And then you've got Phantom as well. So join the community, phantom.us, sign up for the community. It's free access. They'll give you the OVA to download and play about with as well. And also, like I say, if you want an RPM installation because you're doing it in AWS, just request it. It's not given as default. And then obviously, that's what I've put at the bottom there, just from support. But it gives you access to blogs, community downloads. They have hundreds of playbooks pre-built in their community. And one final thing I forgot to say is that you can also link your Phantom instance up to your own Git repository, GitLab, or your own Git server as well, so that every time you create and save a playbook, it goes into your own repository and you can change control it as well. And then if you do have a new Phantom server, you can just ready to rock with your existing playbooks. Okay. Thank you. Drop the mic. What?
Drop the mic. Yeah, drop the mic right.
Give him one or two.
I'll take that.
Right, do you have my slides somewhere here? And I'm an associate security consultant at ECS, which I won't tell you too much about because ECS, well, I believe that both Harry and Tom just finished talking about it. Moving on though, my background is in security and sort of recently DevOps. However, DevOps is sort of my interest as well, and I spend some of my personal time doing some development for myself, for the fun of it. Today I'm going to talk to you about Docker, which is surprising. This is a Splunk group meeting, but that's why there's a little icon of Splunk here, which I realize now you can't actually see very well on this projector. But that's fine. I'm going to be talking about how Docker and Splunk can interface in various ways, and just a little bit about why they have made successful partners, and what they do well together. So what is Docker? I'm actually going to skip ahead to my next slide here and show you what is Docker by looking at an example with Splunk. So typically on your laptop, and I would like to stress, environment is not equal to production in this case. Do not try this in production. It's not going to work well. You're not going to be happy with it. But in development and on your laptop and personal reasons, you can have Splunk running on your laptop usually. So I'm guessing that many of you have this kind of setup here, where you're running Splunk directly on top of your operating system, which is fine. You know, install it to /ops/Splunk. It does well. However, I have found that in this case, it's not sufficient for me. I want to have multiple instances. I want to sort of do some personal stuff on one, have something ready to present to a customer on another, and so on and so forth. So moving on, I don't know if any of you ever tried to do this, where you have one operating system and install multiple Splunks. So Splunk 1 would be for the customer, and then /ops/Splunk 2 would be something else, /ops/Splunk 3 would be something else. And if any of you ever tried this, I can tell you it becomes messy, it becomes hard to manage, and it becomes hard to do as well, because Splunk likes to be alone on the box at the end of the day, I think. Especially with ports, right? So every Splunk wants to listen on port 8000, 8089. So you might move on to a typical model for a server where you have a hypervisor and you have a VM, and each VM runs Splunk. But if you do this for yourself, or even a development environment, it starts costing so many resources, right? You have all this overhead. Every instance costs memory, disk space, a lot of disk space. Sometimes the VMs are large. And, well, at the end of the day, you end up with 3 Splunks, but at a huge cost. So here comes Docker, and this is what it can do for you. You have an operating system on which you have Docker, and you have something called a Splunk image. So this is the basic 300, 400 megabytes that Splunk usually takes. And you have several containers that use this base image. And with this system, each container ends up having no more disk usage and minimal resource overhead, because the Splunk process, in this case, runs directly on top of your kernel. It's just constrained and limited by the kernel in interaction with other processes and other things, which means you can set up a development environment. For example, in staging stuff for production. In ECS, we are experimenting right now with a method of doing this, so each developer can have this Splunk setup almost exactly the same as production on their laptop. Alternatively, of course, you can have it like me, where you have Splunk on your laptop and you simply use it for whatever you may want to. I have, a container to show it to a customer. I can have a container for myself, for ingesting some data, just for playing with it, for testing stuff out. And this method works quite well, I think, compared to the other methods. So how does Docker do this? Again, you have an operating system and you have the Docker engine on top of it. You have several operating system images with sort of your standard Linux executables. And mind you, this is not only Linux. If you have a Windows computer or a Mac, there is a Docker for Windows and Docker for Mac. I can't say they're as efficient or as simple to work with as the Linux variant, but they do work. I'm using one, or will be showing you one right very soon. And on top of these images, you can have Java, Splunk, with multiple apps running on top of it. So in this case, you can have a Splunk index and a Splunk search head on the same physical host, and they will not be able to see each other except for the ports and anything that you choose to expose. So they will be perfectly isolated, and these instances will appear as if they have their own box. They'll be able to use the same port, have different IP addresses, communicate over the network as if they were 2 different hosts. However, they'll be running on the same physical machine. And if you have a sufficiently large host, you can run other apps. You can run something in Java, Node.js simultaneously, and have it connect to it in between these containers and these applications in a very controlled fashion. So how would you do this if you wanted to? And now, disclaimer, I had planned to do this on my laptop. However, we only have VGA in this room. So I'll be doing this on a colleague's laptop, where I never ran this before. So this will be a true test of whether this works or not. So try to bear with me, I guess. So in this case, I'll be using this docker run command. In fact, maybe if I can exit out of this presentation view and just copy this command down. So in this case, this is a neat example. I actually used this command quite recently when Splunk released 7.1. So if you don't have access to Splunk Oxygen and you wanted to play with these new features and just see the new UI, you would have to, well, install it on your machine. However, in this case, I could simply run it in Docker. Let's see. There we go. So here is little terminal window. I actually probably should, yeah. There you go. So this is me just running Splunk with these arguments. Now this is Splunk 7.1, which means it's going to request a password. It is a little bit annoying, but unavoidable nonetheless. I could have, but would have been different.
I have a script.
Okay, so apparently I can't type in passwords very well. Of course, in a live demo every time, right?
It's not production, just do something stupid.
There we go.
There we go. So that password actually worked. I tried ECS 123. That was too simple as well. So what do we have here? This is a standard. You would expect to see this anytime you launch Splunk. And let's see if we actually did manage. So if I go here and open, I assume Harry has Chrome on here. Maybe. All right. Now I assigned port 8009 through Docker, so I exposed port 8009 in that command. And sure enough, here we go. I have Splunk instance, and it works exactly as you would expect. There we go. And here we go. So if anyone here hasn't seen the 7.1 UI, this is it. It's a bit different. And you can play around with it and use it as a normal Splunk instance until you're ready to let it go, at which point you can clean it up quite easily as well. So that's us here. So to briefly explain what I did, and I realize that you can't see it very well, but the Docker run portion of this command tells Docker you want to start a new container. rm, put a big warning in there. That's because I will actually, the moment I stop this container, will remove it. So it'll do automatic cleanup for me. I won't have to worry about deleting the data, deleting the configuration. This is for, I just wanted to start it temporarily, check it out, let it go. So if you don't want it to get removed, do not use this. IT is interactive mode. So Splunk asked me for the password. It wouldn't have been able to do it unless I specified this. And that would have crashed and burned, so I didn't want that. Name is just the name of the Splunk container. Port mapping, so I mapped port 8009, which you saw me access in the browser, to port 8000, which is Splunk's default port. Environmental variables accept license by default, so we didn't have to click through that menu, and answer yes in case Splunk decided to ask me a question. And I specified Splunk 7.1. Splunk is the registry name on Splunk on Docker Hub, and Splunk the software in that registry at version 7.1. So that's quite simple, and you can even you can specify any version. It goes back to like 5.0 on Docker. So if you want to check out how it used to look, or if your code would have been broken on that, you could do. You can also run these containers persistently, so your data does not get erased, which is sometimes preferable. I actually had a little demo set up where I had just a prepared container ready for a demo, which sadly I couldn't do because my laptop is gone. But this is what you would do. These are the commands you would execute. I'll spare you looking at it, as I don't actually have one prepared right now. But it works much the same way, except when you do Docker stop and Docker start, it goes away without deleting data and then comes back with all your data intact. Docker can also be a great tool to help you do labs. For example, when I was learning to do clustering, both search head and indexer, I had a problem because I didn't have several physical machines sitting around. So using this configuration, which may seem quite complex, but it's not. It's just the same thing copied over and over and over again with different names assigned. Indexer 1, IX1, indexer 2, indexer 2. I can create a very big lab environment quite easily. Now these instances obviously won't act like a full cluster. They won't be able to index nearly the same amount of data, but they will be able to do basic communication, so you can quite easily do any labs you're working on, any admin level stuff. You can start this environment and do a lab on it and figure out how things work without having to worry about physical resources. Finally, Docker and Splunk also support information exchange. So when you're running things in Docker, be it your DevOps team or yourself or whatever else, you can easily enable logging into Splunk via the HTTP event collector. So you configure the options, including the Splunk token and Splunk host, on your Docker command line or in a Docker Compose. And it will automatically get logged directly into your instance, which is quite convenient for these cases. And I had planned to give you guys a longer demo, so I do apologize about that. That was some technical difficulties there. However, I do recommend you check out these resources if this is even vaguely interesting to you. There's some great stuff, including Splunk in a Box, which allows us a pre-scripted solution, so you don't actually have to type away at the command line, but rather get a command line GUI almost, which lets you start up any environment you like. Docker run reference, Docker compose reference, all these can help you get started with this cool tool, which is actually quite great, I think, with Splunk. So if anyone has any questions.
So a point from the live stream, less of a question. One question which I already answered was, is this the community edition of Docker or the enterprise edition?
It's absolutely the community edition. The question was, is this the community edition? Yes, yes it is. It's the community edition and it's free. So you can download Docker and play with it. There's also an enterprise edition, which frankly for personal use cases doesn't offer very much more. So there's no need for us to pay for it at this time.
And correctly if you repeated this just for people on the channel, but Anthony has pointed out that when you download Splunk Enterprise for free via the Docker container, you get a 1-year license that lets you index up to 20 gig a day.
So apparently when you download, I'm going to repeat this for the stream. Apparently when you download Splunk through the Docker system, you get a 20 gig license for a year, which I wasn't actually aware of. So that's awesome. You know, go have fun with that.
What's new in 7.0 or 7.1?
I think it's for like non-commercial use, but means that you can run your dev environments in a big way.
So that's awesome. I didn't know that, but definitely something to be aware of if you are using the system. Right. Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Tyler.
It's not that easy.
Okay, so hopefully all's good still with the live stream and you guys can hear me. Just make sure that's plugged in. Great. So hopefully you guys had some interesting things to note from those two presentations. Having worked with both Tom and Thomas, it's really interesting to see the different areas that as an organization we've been getting into and interested in. So Phantom's a massive area of growth because the automation piece is really important. And then with the Docker piece on the flip side, it's very much around, well, how do we actually develop things for this platform that we all think is really, really useful and do so in a repeatable and kind of carefully documented way using version control and so on. So this is probably going to be nice and short. This is really just an FYI for those of you that may not be aware of it already. So most of you will know that Splunk has a number of premium apps. So these are apps that they do charge money for, unlike 99% of everything else. And they've recently released a free kind of update to one of those. And it's not kind of a software update, but it's more an add-on, and it's called Content Updates, and it's for enterprise security. The benefit, however, being that this is still on Splunk base, so you can still go have a look at it. And I think there's a lot of value inside it. Fundamentally, what enterprise security content updates are about is it's about leveraging Splunk's expertise in the security space and the Splunk space to try and enable and accelerate those customers and those people that use Splunk for security use cases. So Splunk has a fantastic research team, and that crosses both the kind of Splunk big data space but also the UBA space. Those teams are, you know, based together, and they do have a lot of knowledge sharing. And this is a way of them articulating that knowledge and the things they find to their customers in a very kind of pragmatic and agile way. So one of the key points of this is that high frequency is one of the takeaways. So this isn't something that you update once a year. This is ideally something that you're pragmatically updating every month, every couple of months. And Splunk has been increasing the speed of which they release these updates. So it comes in the shape of an app, just like everything else as far as Splunk configuration. So you can find it on Splunk base right now. These slides will be shared, so the hyperlinks will work a lot better than they do right now. But fundamentally, what it allows you to do is say, okay, so for example, when WannaCry came out, or NotPetya, or things along those lines, so Splunk's research team are being asked by their customers and by the industry, everyone's clambering for information. How do I detect it? What are the indicators of compromise? What's the story? Where did it come from? What does it do? How do I detect it? How do I stop the attack chain? And all those things. They're the things that pretty much every security operations center in the world was doing as these threats were emerging. Some were faster and more pragmatic than others, identifying it and trying to forensically analyze it themselves. Others were very much waiting on what the industry would share with them, what their partners might share with them, what do their vendors release to protect them. And this is another one of those things where the vendor is pragmatically going out, and bearing in mind, again, this is a free thing, the Splunk's not selling this, but they're using it as something to drive value from what is a valuable product. Now, fundamentally, you get this lovely little narrative. So when I worked in Security Operations Center as an incident responder, we'd often have to write summaries for management that often weren't necessarily as technical as the people writing it. And having something kind of quite canned, quite easy to tell the story with is going to, bang, this is the issue, this is how you describe it. Okay, cool. Now I'm back to hunting, I'm back to mitigation. It then aligns what it's found with this story, this analytical story, to existing standards and frameworks. I, as a pet peeve of mine, find it very frustrating when vendors try and reinvent the wheel with their terminology, when they create one more standard, one more framework, to consolidate all others. So this is a way of, they basically tag it with vendor neutral security standards and frameworks that are already out there. So MITRE's attack model, you've got their CIS security controls, and I also believe they're adding a couple more, but these are kind of the key things, and certainly ones that I used to use when I was in a SOC. I wanted to know that what controls might detect or combat the threat, and I also wanted to know what type of actual attack it was leveraging against my infrastructure. And then finally, when it come to the story, at what point in the kill chain might it help me? This particular one is around delivery, and I think this was for an SQL injection. Yeah, SQL injection. So everything's mapped in a way that hopefully is familiar to anyone working in security operations, anyone trying to protect an organization. A lot of people's efforts are often mapped to these types of things. What are we focusing on? Well, right now we're trying to cut things off as they get delivered within our organization. Okay, that sounds really interesting. Oh, but I'm also focused on exfiltration and how people take stuff out of the organization. Okay, great. It's a really interesting and useful way of mapping those things. So this big scary search, or it is for those that don't speak T-stats very well, is the type of thing that comes with it. Now, Splunk can be incredibly powerful, but some things are difficult to unlock without a reasonable amount of experience and potentially training as well. And so the value here is that it's an out-of-the-box type of thing. You look at one, I think at the moment there's 44 analytical stories, and within each story there might be tens of different use cases to help you with it. But you're able to go, right, okay, well, within SQL injection, this is going to look for anything with long URLs, which happens to be one of the indicators of that form of attack. And so the literal experts in Splunk, the people that have worked with the technology for years and years and years, the developers, the architects, and the security experts have gone away, rapidly prototyped this search, and then shared it. Again, they've mapped it to all the relevant categories that you might want. They've said their confidence, so if this were to alert, what should your confidence interval be? What should you be applying to this in your workflow? When it fires, are you going to tell the incident team, I am 100% sure we've had an SQL attack? Or are you going to say, I'm reasonably sure this is an indicator, it's not a guarantee, and that's what the confidence is about. So the point here being, I can click that search button and run that against my infrastructure. And as long as I'm using and the common information model with accelerated data models that will run. Now that's not all the searches, but as that is best practice, that's what Splunk's developed them for. Now if you are a customer of enterprise security, which is their SIEM product, you can configure this as a correlation search with a one-button press. One button, it will fill in all the relevant things, pulling it from those categories, and you save it, and it's done. And you've just deployed a story that will hopefully detect SQL injection via checking for long URLs. Now, as I said, there's, I think at the moment, around 44 stories, and within many of the stories, there are literal tens and tens and tens, and I'll try and give you a quick demo of different use cases to detect it, because they're not just talking about, well, you know, if it's not a long URL SQLI, well, then it's probably not worth it. No, they're saying, well, we've threat modeled this, we've thought about all the different attack vectors. You know, some of these guys are, you know, previous red teamers or pen testers, and they've gone, well, how would I attack it? What have we seen in our customers? And when you've got 10,000 plus customers around the world, you have access to potentially quite a lot of that feedback from customers of, oh, well, you know, those rules that you helped us build, they were great, but they didn't catch this. Oh, that's a really good point. We didn't think of that. Well, let's take that feedback up. And just like many other community-based or membership-based organizations that share threat intel, then it gets integrated. One of the things I also really like, and this typically is around Splunk full stop, but specifically in this space, is they have built into the app the capability to provide feedback. Splunk's research team is so hungry for feedback from customers and users. They want this type of collaborative platform to be really successful. And this was only launched in October last year. So, you know, it's relatively new as an initiative, and they really want more and more engagement because they want it to be really valuable, because their business is protecting their customers, because a customer that's being protected is a customer that's likely to purchase more. It makes commercial sense, but it also makes, you know, ethical sense, which again, you know, if you manage to get that trifecta, everyone's a winner type. So there's just a few resources which are more for, again, once the slides are shared. But I'm now just going to try and give a quick demo of what it looks like, if I can get on. But there's a couple of really decent blogs which kind of explain the value, why it's something that you should maybe look into. And again, really encourage you to keep it up to date, because things are released very often or tweaked and refined. And when you find things that don't work or don't apply to your use case as described, give them that feedback, because they are genuinely very interested in it. So I will quickly see if I can pivot and open my demo. Okay, so again, apologies about the size of what's on the screen. It usually looks a lot prettier than this, but what this enables me to do is I'm going to select a story. Just because I've actually not seen this story before, let's go for crypto mining. So for those of you that don't know, I'm not going to read off the description, but AWS crypto mining is essentially when you have an AWS account compromised, either with API access or web console access, and then EC2 instances are leveraged to mine cryptocurrency. It's actually becoming quite a significant problem because, you know, the wrong person with the wrong credentials can just choose to spin up 1,000 EC2 instances like that of the largest possible size. And if you've not built those controls into your environment and the monitoring, then you could suddenly be given a bill of literally hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they've walked away with a ton of cryptocurrency. And that could happen over a weekend. And you walk in and you're like, oh, I'm just working along. And suddenly you wonder why your credit card's been maxed out. You know, that doesn't make sense. It's my company card. Oh, problem. So this is the narrative around it. This is explaining why this is important, possibly some of the research behind it. We've got a reference here specifically calling out a white paper. And these are always, the references are almost always external sources. They're trying to validate their hypothesis rather than just going, well, we're Splunk, we know everything. They're saying, well, based on the research, based on the industry, this is an issue, this is how that issue presents, and we're now trying to show you how to detect and disrupt the problem within your environment. So under the category of detection, we've now got a number of different use cases. We've got abnormally high AWS instances. So for those of you that don't necessarily speak SPL, this looks like, it's essentially looking at, well, if I've got a threshold of, a user, how many instances would a single user launch within a set time period? This is averaging at 4. Okay. I've launched maybe occasionally more than 4, but usually it's 1, 2 instances at a time. If a user suddenly launches 10, 20, 1,000 instances, this would alert, this would tell you. And even if it was legitimate, at least you have a conversation to verify before your organization is billed for tens of thousands of dollars. So as we move down, we've got, 4 other use cases. Instance started in previously unseen region. So ECS, we run all of our AWS instances within Europe for various reasons. But our accounts allow us to start them anywhere. So if I suddenly start seeing stuff raised in Australasia, in Americas, well, that's an anomaly. That's something I want to know about. Unseen instance type. Well, if our initiative is, very kind of microservice based and we're looking at minimizing our footprint and suddenly the largest, beefiest box is launched, well, that's really strange. They've never done that before. It's those kind of things. Moving down to context, so this would be things that you might want to pull in to get details of the instances. I don't think we've got any ones for these. They'll support, previously saying AWS reasons, these support the previous searches. So I'll not go into any more detail on these, but just to kind of explain what it looks like. It's very simple. It's a very simple app. I think what it shows you is hugely valuable. But you can, again, just like every Splunk app, you can drill down and say, well, what are you interested in? I'm interested in command and control. I'm interested in command and control. Live demos never work properly. But yeah, that's all I really had to share really. Any questions on content updates for enterprise security?
When you press that configure in the
and possibly my internet's cut out because it's not loading the interface. But let's see. I'm also just going to check the live stream just to see if anyone's got any questions there. Okay, so configure an ES. I think this is an ES instance. And here we go. So configure an ES will do exactly that. It will pull everything in, including the description, time range that's been recommended by that analytical story. It'll pull it all in. I can click save. I can tell it that rather than just raise a notable event, I also want it to send an email, ask a question to Tanium, order a pizza. Yeah, let's do that. Because sorry for those of you that can't join us in person, we've just dominated £200 worth of pizza. It's great because it's 2 for Tuesday, so it's actually £100. Definitely thin for me. Anyway, I'm not going to do that. But yes, it does configure, as promised, straight into enterprise security. So there is a question, but it's just asking me to arrange a group demo for Splunk Insights Infrastructure, which I'm sure we can sort out, Tony, at some point. Any questions in the room? Okay. Any questions? I think, oh, we're buffering. Any questions from the live stream? Doesn't look like it, but as always, anyone can reach me either on LinkedIn, Twitter, email, so please do. I'll actually put those contact details up just for those who may well need it. Yeah, nothing right now. But yeah, so anyway, that kind of brings us to a close, everyone. Thank you very much for persevering with us. Thank you so much, Product Forge, for making the time, especially amid some technical problems to live stream and record us. And for our presenters, Tom and Thomas. So thank you very much, and please come to the next one. Right, please do grab some food if there's any left, and beer, there's loads of that left. And I'll be around for the next half hour as well.